G'day and welcome to another edition of the Hawk Talk podcast. Round 2 is done and dusted, and it's not been the start to the season we'd all hoped for, with Hawthorn hammered by a resurgent Sydney. We're back to make sense of it all and of course preview the game that's been billed as an off-Broadway blockbuster. Let's get down to business. My name is Nick Mason and with me as always is a man who might prefer to focus on Box Hill this week. G'day Tiz.
Hooray! We're recording. What a great thing.
So we did postpone it. It was meant to be Sunday night, but there was a call that was made.
Mine. I was like, nah, not doing it.
Fair enough. It was pretty bleak.
It was. And then we were lucky enough to have Sammy go on Footy Classified, and you were overjoyed getting to watch that program again, having the excuse to watch Caro.
Oh, my vow to never watch Footy Classified again. Already broken. Round 2.
Wasn't he good, though?
He was very good, yeah.
A markedly better performance than the side.
Well, the thing about Sam Mitchell on that show is the panel kind of went into their shells and were kind of weird around him, almost like they couldn't say certain things to his face.
Or they'd read his CV.
Yeah, that's right. He is much more accomplished than anyone on that panel.
I enjoyed how much silence they gave him.
What about the insinuation that the AFL's not happy with Hawthorn and their list strategy?
I did enjoy the feigned, sort of, I
Bemusements?
don't really understand. Mate, I'm new to this. Perhaps, the AFL really do control lists, but we're not Melbourne. No, that's not what he said, was it? No, he meant, but I haven't seen that evidence of that. Anyway, the AFL had a list of stuff they want fixed at Hawthorn before the list.
Exactly. Not the high priority it might have been otherwise.
Yeah, I don't imagine anyone could fly in the face of Caro with the AFL aren't happy with Hawthorn at the moment, but probably not for that reason.
Exactly. Oh, it's such a tired narrative.
I tell you what, though, cutting to the quick and getting it early, round 2, to get that interview done. Well done, Sammy.
So he doesn't have to appear in like round 9 or something?
Yeah, when we get our next home game. The fixture's against us. The media's against us. Don Scott apparently against us. No. Just has a different view. Everything's just sort of stacking up against Hawthorn, and then we're playing our former coach on the weekend, and we've got to find ways to look past this result, because it's like anything when these are all learning new techniques in footy. They're very young, inexperienced. Even our over 50, over 100 game players aren't playing very well. That's because the team is not cohesive. Mm-hmm. They don't know the best method to get the ball into attack. And considering our midfield had one of their best games I've seen, especially for a young midfield, they did well against Sydney, and Sydney have a bonanza of midfielders. Their midfield and their defence carried them to the grand final. And then they put in a performance in the grand final that was like us on the weekend, and not one of those commentators bothered to mention how Sydney grand final-like Hawthorn was today.
I don't know, mate. It's a bleak read, the scoreboard, but I can't help but think it might have been different if only we didn't cut Tom Phillips.
Tom Phillips.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Hawthorn cut too deep, mate. What about Dan Howe?
I mean, Ed is performing better than Tom did.
Jackson Callow would have been really good out there on the weekends.
Look.
What about John Segler? Tim O'Brien? Geez, we'll let some talent go. Because they were part of the next premiership side.
Jager did look like he was going to beat Clarko, though. And I was waiting. I was sitting there going, come on, Jager, do it.
Hey, mate, you got another opportunity this weekend.
Yeah, wings.
Yeah, get Wingard back into the side. Kick
Wings
the winning
kicks,
goal.
8, does a ronky. Oh, that'd be terrific.
Oh, but my point is that that tired narrative is just so annoying, and
did Ronke kick 8? It felt like 8.
I think it was. It's always some player that hasn't quite hit their straps until they meet us.
Yeah.
Amati. Case in point.
Yeah, I know. But Hawthorn should have done the research on Amati. He's been fairly good against us.
But here's the thing. You could have said that about a lot of other players in the past.
Yeah.
Who tend to spring up out of nowhere when we play them. Yeah, Peter Wright kicked 6 all of a sudden. Never done that before in his career.
Or again.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is how it is. And
well, Mitchell summed up the performance by saying that Hawthorn was its own worst enemy, which I think is fair enough. There was poor skill across the park, And we were just put to the sword when we...
Transition was awful.
Yeah, didn't make amends.
But
Didn't
talk
actually
about
defend the
how
transition.
good our midfielders were. Because Day was terrific. Ward was good. He was on task. Then you had Warple, who looks like he's actually getting back to what
something.
he didn't look anything like that last year.
It's hard to see sometimes because the team is struggling. But, I mean, Warple looks completely different to the 2022 model. 22 touches, team high 8 inside 50, 6 score involvements. So I think he's tracking relatively well, certainly a lot better than last year. The story of the day for us was Will Day, who had a career best game, and I sorely hope that he signs with us soon, because I might not be able to enjoy what is a breakout year until he does so.
Thought about sending him a Mont Blanc.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, just so he can practice the signature.
Just as long as you don't send him a Sauv Blanc, it'll remind him too much of the wineries back in SA. The team high, 7 clearances, 26 touches at 76.9%. It's a tick for this midfield experiment. It's going quite well with Will Day.
Yes, yeah.
Again, bloody hope he doesn't leave, because I don't want to have 1 year of this and then he buggers off.
He'll be fine. He's not going anywhere. He's got the heritage.
Dylan Moore, whose disposal efficiency was well down this week. It was just 56.5% for 23 touches, but a team high 8 marks, a team high 8 score involvements of a possible 17. So, I mean, he's accounted for half of them, basically, including 5 inside 50s. It's very clear how important he is in driving us forward.
Don't know how he does it in such a poor display by the team itself. There's really no cohesion between the lines.
No, that's right. It's going all right in the midfield, certainly better than it was, ironically. I mean, +7 in the clearances, centre clearances also +7, broke even with stoppage clearances. It's either end of the field that we're really struggling in, which we'll get to that in a sec.
Yeah. I mean, we'll get to how the defence goes backwards, but anyway.
Yeah. John Newcombe with 25 touches once again led the way for pressure acts. He obviously got the memo from round 1 to round 2 because that was a place that we really needed to improve. Still below the competition average in that regard.
Across the side, yeah.
Yeah, so he's attracting more attention from opposition clubs as well, which is really no surprise. We did forecast that for this year.
But he's working through it quite well for a young man.
One guy that does like to throw his body around is Lloyd Meek.
I thought you were going to say Connor Nash.
Well, he does like that too, but Lloyd Meek I thought was a standout this game. Arguably the best ruckman out there on the day. Won the hit-outs and posted a team-high 8 tackles, as well as his first goal for the club.
And those are real tackles.
They are.
They're ones that hurt.
You'll know when you're tackled by Lloyd Meek, I suspect.
That's what I like about it. Nash is the same, but I don't think he had that many tackles, but he definitely hit their captain, and Brad Johnson in the box thought, oh, no, I didn't think that was in football anymore.
Yeah, no, I thought the bump was dead.
It was beautiful.
When you do it properly, it's fine.
I enjoyed that immensely. That was probably the highlight of the day.
When you don't concuss a bloke, when you don't hit him in the head, it's
But
fine.
he feels it, yeah.
Yeah, you're allowed to do that. That hasn't changed.
Yeah, you're allowed to intimidate your opponent.
Exactly. No, that was a beautiful bump from Connor Nash, and yeah, I don't know how anyone thought that could possibly get weeks.
That's so odd.
When the headline was, is Connor Nash in trouble? I thought, is there something wrong with his shoulder? How long is he going to be out? Anyway.
We've got a number of questions from the listeners, and each of them more unanswerable than the last.
Well, speaking of applying a physical presence, we had a question from one of our listeners, Stewie Bro, which I thought was interesting to highlight. He says, there was talk of pre-season about getting back to being unsociable. Where has that gone?
Well, they're still in the twos, DGB and Butler.
Butler, yeah.
Well, I mean, he was
Butler
elevated this week.
Yep. Yeah.
But they were the blokes who were getting aggro. And
is it just exclusively a competitive spirit across 2 guys, is it? 2 players?
I think we definitely need it.
Yeah.
I was talking to you about this. I think we need extroverts. I think we need players that Sicily is apparently wearing his heart on his sleeve, but we need other blokes to do that and be prepared to put their head over the footy and crunch opposition, because there's been moments where our boys have been crunched and they haven't flown the flag, and I think North and Clarko are definitely going to identify that as something that may be a nice little pressure point to push.
We're in need of extroverts that can assert themselves, basically, not only internally in the team, but on the opposition.
And stand up and bring people with them. It's very hard from defence to do that. You need that on each line.
This question from Gus, speaking of each line, what is the temporary key forward solution? Because Cozzy ain't really coming it right now.
Cozzy needs assistance. He's obviously trying very hard. I mean, he moves a lot. He gets to a lot of contests, but most often they don't fall his way. And let's face it, he's the only get-out kick forward. So if they bring Lynch up, who played a good game in the VFL, and they drop perhaps Reeves, because the resting ruckman forward doesn't work unless it's Meek. I think that's something they've got to look at. But we've played Essendon that were geared up for that match and just turned it on after half-time. And we've played Sydney, who are still smarting from a terrible grand final defeat. So North are not that calibre.
So you reckon you back Cozzy to stand up?
And in Tassie, his favourite ground,
As we know.
I think he will get the nod again.
Yeah, I suspect he will, but I wonder how long we can possibly persist, because Lewis is still a long way off. Obviously, Jack is still injured as well, who I think they would try as a forward if they had that option now. I know he's been playing as a defender, but I think they would pull that lever if they could. Regrettably, we didn't draft
Jed Rule. A key forward.
We'll get to him. We'll get to Jed. But yeah, key forward would have been really nice. But you're not to know that both Lewis and Jekka are going to be unavailable. You know, there's depth that might have been there that we don't have now. It exposes Cozzy as he looks like the only key position forward option, and he hasn't kicked a goal, has he? And where does it leave him if he goes another round goalless? I mean,
the pressure just rises entirely again and again, and he had a couple of shots. You just nail one, just nail one. It's the same with the team. Like, one win is going to change the trajectory of their psychology. At the moment, we're very reactive, even on field.
Well, this ties into a cluster of questions from 3 listeners here. I'll read out all of them. This one from Anthony. How come our defence has looked so bad compared to last year with pretty much the same names? And this one from Views from the Nosebleeds. How is our defence broken down so badly this year when it was reliable last year? Outside of Scrimshaw, it's largely unchanged. And this final one from Boother. What is our ideal backline setup? What was a strength is now a liability. Is it the Frost factor? He wasn't part of the group last year, and now he's back. The unit looks a bit off.
Well, that is a solution people have foisted upon us on Twitter.
Look.
And it happened. No, it's not out of the realms of possibility.
These are realistic.
Sammy did put Frost forward in Tassie.
Yeah.
And he might do it again on the weekend.
Maybe.
I would not be surprised. However, the reason the defence looks so poor is because there's a lack of pressure on the ball carrier. And also, they're attacking at the wrong moments. The number of times they got the ball was given up and then came straight back, and our defenders were out of position, and it was an easy goal to the Swans, or very, very, very easy play for the Swans to get a shot on goal was ridiculous. So it's about ball retention, and that defensive unit has not lost all its ability because Chris Newman has gone and decided to coach the forward line. It's because stuff upfield is not working out as it's intended.
Well, when Sam says that we're our own worst enemy, it's basically saying that we put ourselves under enormous pressure, instantly under the pump when our skills let us down, and we don't defend the other way. And it comes into a defence. The ball comes like a ricochet right back into that defensive 50, and we're just not set up. We're just not ready for it.
And the last thing you want to do, and this is starting to happen, is go into your shells and become ultra defensive, which is something you could do, and it could be forgiven if Sammy does that against very, very good sides. I thought he might try that against Sydney, have a quarter where all they do is defend. But he's not doing that. He is trying to attack, and the team is trying to attack, and it's just not paying dividends at the moment. It will. At some point as a fan, you've got to look past the result, the scoreboard, and look for the glimmers of improvement. And there are individuals improving, but team cohesiveness, team plan, ball movement, it's not showing up yet. And you've got to remember we've got a few players in that lineup that are going to take at least 6 weeks to look like they belong. And you're talking about a senior ball carrier in Amon, Lloyd Meek, who's becoming more and more important each week.
Yep.
You've got Will Day now playing out of the midfield. He has his best game, second week playing midfield in the AFL. I mean, he's played on the wing and other things, but out and out midfielder.
Yeah, a little bit different these days.
It's all about time and how long you could put up with giving these boys these experiences. They'll gel together eventually.
It's the big question of balance. That's what Mitchell has to achieve at selection.
And all these fans saying, "Oh, this is dreadful," they're acting like they haven't seen it before, Nick. 04.
Yeah, shades of
05.
04.
06. 97. 98. Almost 99. What was the first? I mean, the first time we missed finals was 96, wasn't it? Anyway, no, 97. And then, of course, there's the period from 1926 through to 58.
Where were you, Tiz?
And then there was all the commotion after the first premiership. We were pretty good, but off field we were terrible after that. So there were missed opportunities. And they're trying to write a list, the management, and there's so many issues off field as well. We're a very entertaining club, Nick. Very entertaining.
For better or worse. We're certainly entertaining to the entire footy media. But anyway, I've already
shut up about us.
Already been on a soapbox about that, so I'll refrain from doing so again. This one from Neil. What are we doing to Dimmer? Have we broken him by switching his position every game? He seems to be losing one-on-one battles in the back line he would have normally won in the past. Do we have a plan here, or is it all a knee-jerk response in-game?
What about Impey? It has a bit of the Impey feel about it, being pushed forward like that.
With the screws loose?
Yeah. But I don't know. Well, he didn't get a touch forward. I don't know. He only added something the week before, kicked 2 goals, and against the flow. But
it's funny because heading into this season, I would have counted him as one of the dependable defenders that one of the first picked.
Yeah.
Who never
Why would
really
you bother moving him? Yeah.
He would never really move because that's where he's best. And I don't know. I think we're scrambling for solutions as to finding some firepower. But
look, our one-on-one breaks, our one-on-one contests, and the way they're breaking is awful at the moment. And that's a question of confidence, and it's a question of whether, kicking it to your teammates' advantage. Now, can we turn to Box Hill?
We can.
Who are a beacon of talent and light
and hope.
And really rubbed their noses in it in the VFL. They should have won by more.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I felt like O'Sullivan is just a bloke that I can go to the VFL to watch, unless, of course, he gets elevated to the AFL, and then I'll go to the AFL to watch. But, I love his energy.
That competitive spirit is a mean little machine, is Jack O'Sullivan. Great to watch. Box Hill Hawks, 14-13-97, defeated Sydney 10-10-70. Close contest for much of the day, and a very entertaining one at that, but Box Hill kicked away with a 5-goal final quarter to win by 27 points. I would argue that Box Hill actually play with a similar blueprint to what Hawthorn do, only on the day they did it far better.
Well, they controlled the ball much better. There were a couple of centre breaks where Sydney kept themselves in the contests. But for the most part, Hawthorn were Box Hill were clearly the better side.
Well, Box Hill commanded the space a lot better. They finished up with plus 108 in uncontested footy, plus 54 in marks. That says to me that they're really getting a game on their terms.
And Sydney were lazy in not shutting down the options.
There were quite a few times where Sydney were let back in the door because of just some bizarre decisions and poor disposals that you wouldn't normally see. You could just tell that these mistakes are one out of the box. It's not like what you've seen with Hawthorn.
Yeah, they'll be ironed out.
Yeah, exactly. You're not seriously worried. It's just a moment in time. But one guy that did impress, actually, a very timely effort as well, as he's searching for a contract, Seamus Mitchell, with 30 touches, 9 marks and 2 tackles.
He's a chance to play this week.
It would have been best of field if not for midfield master and captain of Box Hill, Cal Porter, who was excellent. But he's posting a really productive season, Seamus Mitchell. We're one round in, of course, but the signs he's shown up till now in practice games and things like that, he's demonstrating some quality, some run, some drive. Little John regards him as being above VFL level, so for whatever that's worth, Little John knows what he's talking about.
He's very positive, very optimistic.
He is.
Is he a teacher by training? Because I'd love him to write my reports if I were at school.
Well, also the numbers don't lie. 30-touch game.
Yeah, but didn't Brockman have 5 touches the other week, and it read like he was... Yeah.
Well, what do you want to talk about Tyler Brockman? 3 goals, 12 disposals, 3 marks. He looks good from the outset.
He definitely looks above the level as well.
Yep. He could be on his way back. He was exciting to watch. Ned Long, who I've predicted huge things for in the second half of this season, I mean, he could be back in the senior side for his second career game in the first half of the season, the way he's going. 29 touches, 7 marks, 6 tackles, 3 clearances, a game that was, grunt personified and in and
Get
under
him in.
ball.
Get him in.
Yep.
6 tackles.
Yeah,
Fabulous.
it's pretty good, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's more than, I would say, apart from Lloyd Meek, I think that's more than anyone had for Hawthorn.
Yep.
So
And he's a big unit.
he is, and committed to the contest. I know it's just one game, but it seemed to me watching him like he'd taken a step
he'll
forward.
play well with Ward too.
Yeah?
Having played with him before.
Your buy-in with that connection's massive, isn't it?
Yeah. And how was Max? Not Max Lynch.
Max Ramsden, he was a lot quieter than the practice game, so he didn't kick his 4 goals, but he played more ruck, so that might be part of it. But the other guy that we're talking about, Cooper Stevens, 23 touches, 5 marks, 5 tackles and 4 clearances. Like Long, contested footy expert, bruised and battered throughout. He took some huge hits. It was a good clearance game from Cooper Stevens, but I didn't see anything that classy or anything too eye-catching to suggest that he'll be playing next week against North.
Okay.
Of course, by the time people listen to this, he might have been handed a debut. So, take it with a grain of salt.
Is McGuinness staying in the lineup?
Big question, isn't it? Because outside that tagging role, which he does very well,
Yeah.
I mean, who was he? He's on Warner.
Mm-hmm.
No doubt he restricted Warner.
Yep.
But what else did he do?
Correct.
And is it unfair to ask that much of him? Maybe. But
No.
this team needs a little bit more.
No. To be a really good tagger, you need to be offensive as well. Cunnington this week or LDU?
I'd say LDU. Anyway.
Is it LDU? It's not UDL, is it?
That's when he's been on the sauce. DGB, speaking of acronyms, 20 touches, 11 marks. A fairly honest performance.
Did he look above the level?
Yeah, I'd say so. A lot was asked of him in terms of the different opponents he played on.
Right.
I didn't think he gave up too many obvious goals.
Mm-hmm.
A lot weren't his fault.
Scrambling?
Yeah, sometimes.
I noticed he had a lovely couple of exit kicks from defensive 50. Really set up a couple of attacks.
I just thought he asserted himself consistently enough throughout the day to help keep Sydney at bay until Box Hill were able to kick away. So I thought, yeah, it was an honest performance, as I said. He did his job. As for some of his other senior teammates, Jack Scrimshaw and Harry Morrison played just some cameo performances there. I didn't really see much from either that would suggest that they're getting elevated either.
Really?
Well,
I would have thought Harry'd straight back in.
You think so? Yeah, about 3/4 of play, 14 disposals, 7 marks. Scrimshaw and a half of footy. He played the second half, 14 disposals and 4 marks. They performed in the roles that you'd expect. And
Obviously above the level at VFL, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were fine. The guy that really made a splash, who Hawthorn has had their eye on for some time, Jed Rule, who was ultimately the difference with 4 goals. That was about the winning margin in the end. He trained with Hawthorn during the pre-season supplemental selection period, but that was as a defender. So he's now a forward. He's 4 goals in his first game. Great effort. And he could yet be picked up in the mid-season draft.
A little bit of flying under the radar from Josh Weddle, who had a good game.
Mm-hmm.
They sort of heaped a spotlight on him in the socials for the club.
Yeah.
And really, I don't know, they put a lot of pressure on him.
Yeah, no, they've turned down the dimmer switch on that spotlight, I think.
But 18 touches and 6 marks and 4 tackles, that's quite good.
Yeah, it is, yeah. And Jack O'Sullivan as well, 2 goals and loves a goal, a celebration. I mean, it was deserved. The celebration
brings
of the one
people
from the
with him,
boundary.
right?
Yes. That competitive spirit, that keenness for the contest.
That's what I want, the energy in that
Exactly.
forward system. I want him to bring people with him. I want he wants the ball.
Yeah. He would be filthy if he lost a contest, I reckon. He'd go just as hard at the next one. That's the vibe I get from him. I mean, in the opening moments of the game, it would have been maybe like the first minute or two, crunching his Sydney opponent like he was Dan Hanbury. Like he's been watching the 2014 Grand Final. I thought that was beautiful. Max Lynch, I thought, was pretty good as well. 28 hitouts, being the dominant ruck on the ground, 10 touches, 3 score assists, and would be a chance to come back in sooner rather than later with Ned Reeves.
Yeah, he looked to be moving pretty well, Maxie. Mm-hmm. A very good performance. There's a bye now, which is odd, I know, but the next time we see him, the curtain raiser.
Curtain raiser.
On Easter Monday at the MCG.
Yes, against Geelong. So that'll be a big one. It's a big day. What do you reckon? Back-to-back wins?
Look, I tell you what, if Geelong lose to Gold Coast, as could happen this weekend, and then they meet us, and we rub their nose in it on Easter Monday.
Stuff dreams are made of. But of course, we've got a different challenge this week. It's Hawthorn versus North Melbourne at UTAS, Saturday, 1:45pm. What changes are we making? Wingard should be right to go.
Our biggest change will be in the result.
Oh, okay. Tipping a win?
We will win.
Okay, wow, very definitive.
But I don't know that Sammy's all that eager to listen to changes to the lineup.
What would you do?
He'll probably give Wingard the nod, which Butler falls out again, is that right?
Unfortunate, yeah, probably. That's probably what would happen.
And then he'll bring in another midfielder, maybe. Hopefully, I hope it's Long. Then he needs to make a decision on Reeves.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind Lynch coming in for Reeves. I wouldn't mind DGB coming in for Frost, potentially.
Really?
Yeah. Well,
you don't just chuck Frost forward and put DGB back.
Yeah, well, you could do that as well. Well, they've got to make changes,
You've got to think about Larky. Clarko's going to be trying everything. You know, he'll be... I don't know. What will he be like? What would Clarko be thinking? I don't want to lose to this mob. That's the one thought in his...
Both of them would be thinking that.
I've got a prediction. He approaches the wrong huddle. 3/4 time.
With the magnets. Showing where everyone's going and what they're doing.
It should be fun. Like I'm looking forward to it. It'll be a good contest. I think it'll be a good contest. I want to see the coaches actually going through the motions, though. I don't want to see like them both avoiding defeat. I want them both trying to win. And I think you will get that from Clarko and Sammy.
I find this game, as with all North Melbourne games, hard to judge because I desperately don't want to lose to this mob.
Do you expect it to be physical? Because I definitely do. There's been question marks on how physical Hawthorn is. I think we'll have to raise that part of our game.
Yeah, absolutely. This question from Lauren. If there isn't a reasonable change in our lineup after 2 horrific losses, is it an issue? Does it breed complacency? I get giving those under 10 games multiple goes for some consistency, but I don't see any benefit from playing the same people week after week, even more so due to the pool of talent at Box Hill, and this year especially the ability to experiment with people in new roles. We get easily beat by a predicted bottom side. I don't want to see us approaching the game in a very similar way the next week.
Yeah, I've been enjoying Lauren's comments on Twitter. They're well thought out and quite difficult to answer, as is this one. So,
so is this to say that if we do suffer defeat against North, it's time to swing the axe?
Well, it's a balancing act. You didn't have Box Hill play in the first round. Now you've seen Box Hill play. They played well. They obviously had some very good performances. You have to reward those. Do you reward it off one performance? It sounds like Sammy wants, he's got to, it's quite delicate. He's got to get the players knowing who their best teammates are, the best way to move the ball against oppositions. There's got to be that cohesion. You've got to understand your teammates. And he won't get that if he's making changes every week.
Well, it ties into that argument that I made about midfield combinations after round 1 and how having too many is possibly perilous because you won't get any sort of consistency or any sense of what works and which guys gel and what you can do with the guys that you have. So, it's about that balance of not making too many changes, but also, I don't know if I want to put it this way, but I will anyway, laying down the law a bit and discussing, what you will accept.
And what you won't.
Big questions.
I don't think that's a problem for Sammy. I think they are very much attuned to what he won't accept.
So your tip is that Hawthorn win?
Yeah, I don't think there's any point in thinking the other way. I think Hawthorn should definitely aim to win. Or play to win. Ride the bumps with a grin, etc.
I'm always curious about, the company line is that they don't listen to the external noise, but the players would know what's being said about the club.
But that's the challenge. Like, even as a fan, you've got to ignore the result.
Yeah, I suppose. But
You and I, we've had moments where if you were to deliberate on the result too much, you would never improve. And that's the situation they're in at the moment.
Well, it's more the case of people are saying, not only are you losing, you're losing in such a way that is purposeful. You're so bad that it can't be by accident. You're doing it deliberately.
It's like they have no long-term memory. I mean, Melbourne tanked. That's tanking.
All I'm saying is it would light a fire under me. I'd say, no, stuff you. That's not who I am as part of this team. That's not who we are as a team. We're playing to win. I wonder if they have heard that external noise and if it does fire them up, because it would fire me up. I would hate to be talked about in that way. So I wonder if it does hit a limit, and I wonder if it does happen to play into the physicality that we're expecting.
Even if it does, that only works for a week, and it's no solution.
No, this is the track that we're on. This is the era
Having
that we're
said
in.
that, one win would make it seem a lot better.
It'd make our jobs easier.
It'd feel good, especially against this North Melbourne mob, who's having everything handed to them.
We need to start wrapping up. Do rate and review our show, not only on Apple Podcasts, but on Spotify as well. One thing we're enormously proud of when it comes to doing this show is the community of diehard Hawks fans we've built around the podcast. You can jump online and join our conversation, whether it's on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram, wherever you like. Now, Tiz, did you know we've been doing this for about 7 years now?
I was aware, and not one premiership in that time.
No, we chose to start after the golden era, which was an interesting move.
I feel like we should go back and do like a... What would you call that?
A retrospective?
Yeah.
Speaking of extra content, we literally have put forward hundreds of hours of recorded content for your enjoyment. But of course, doing this show, it's also many hours of work that no one ever hears. This is a hobby. We make it work around our lives, and we make time for it even when it seems impossible, or even when it's maybe not so enjoyable, say after the Sydney loss. That was a tough one.
There's been worse moments.
There has been worse than that. But all this being said, your support is something that we deeply appreciate, listeners. And if you like what we do, if you want more Hawk Talk podcast, the number one thing you can do to support us is to hop onto Patreon, a subscription service that we use. And by signing up, you'll not only be helping us out, but you'll get a whole archive of bonus content too. And that includes, Tiz, a digital copy of our 2023 season guide.
Which is more positive than anything you'll read on Hawthorn. Anyway.
Hear, read, what have you. So here's where you head. Patreon.com/HawkTalkPod. Now, I suppose when you sign up, it's an opportunity to say, thanks, we appreciate all that you do, and get more stuff from us in return. Patreon.com/HawkTalkPod. And, you know, maybe it's not a great time right now. Maybe you can't sign up, and fair enough. I'll ask this. If you do have Hawthorn supporters in your life who you reckon would really dig what we do and enjoy our show, do spread the word. Tell them about the Hawk Talk podcast. Let's ride the bumps with a grin together. And on all this, one last thing. As always, we'd like to extend a massive thank you to our proud, passionate, and paid up Patreon subscribers who are already on board with us, who help make the Hawk Talk podcast possible. Red time items, mate, as we look to wrap up. Box Hill and Essendon, if you'd believe, drew again. VFLW action, they've drawn again.
It's rigged. Was it rigged?
I think it was in much the same fashion that Hawthorn came back to draw the games. It's the second time that's happened. Meanwhile, a bunch of AFLW re-signings have been announced by the club. Get the montage music ready, because this is a fair few names here. Lucas Rod, Gilroy, Ashmore, McCourt, Smith, Deed, Fleming, Bascarin, Hipwell, Everest, Wales, Elliott, Richardson, Stevenson, Brown and Kemp all signed on with the club for our next season, which I don't believe is till August. But August. Come April, we'll have a few new acquisitions as well, so keep an eye out for that. We'll certainly keep you...
Is that the draft? Is that on the 4th?
I believe it might be, yeah. So it's next Tuesday. Anyway, this question from Patrick. If we get pick 1, what picks would you need to even think about trading it? Also, was inviting Don Scott to a peace summit a mistake in hindsight?
First of all, Don Scott, very, very useful. Every group needs an enemy. There you go.
Do they?
Very good at uniting. Having
right.
one bloke who nobody,
What about
you
inspiring?
can just force him to the side.
Because we want to unite and inspire, Tiz.
I find Don very inspiring.
In what way, dare I ask?
Well, hearing what he had a go at the club about was inspiring to me, because I've had many of those thoughts myself.
Look, the whole idea of the Unite Inspire as a forum is to hear people out.
Yeah.
It's disappointing that, he walked out feeling like he'd not been heard.
Or that he'd been ignored.
Well, yeah.
He'd said his piece, I think. Always reported negatively, of course, but generally that went very well.
Well, yeah, I would have liked a bit more positive coverage about what is essentially a positive idea from Gowers. I think it's a great idea, and he's clearly got a challenge ahead of him to unite and indeed inspire everyone. That is the goal. That is the challenge ahead of him. Would you trade pick 1, and for what? Yeah, neither.
But, if I offered you picks 3, 4 and 5,
Nah. Because if you get pick one, you've either done a deal for it and given up a lot for it, or you finish last. And if you finish last, your prize, as per the AFL, is pick one, and you don't give that away.
I don't know. I think trading out pick one is, historically pretty good.
Yeah, okay. There was maybe that one time where it worked.
Yeah, worked real well for Freo. I can't remember who we got. Anyway, good on you, Hodgie. Even if you have picked us for the spoon.
Oh, but I still really enjoy his commentary as well. I think it's a great addition.
He's a bloody acolyte there. The other the other thing is Harley Reid could be just as good as him. And, of course, that brings talent to your club and,
Talking about Unite and Inspire, to get Harley Reid might serve for just those purposes. Now, this question from Enns. Who do you think will debut next out of our latest draft picks, and do you think they'll all get a debut this year?
I believe they all probably will, actually. But the next one's Jackie O'Sullivan.
Yep, I agree with that. I'm a big Jack O'Sullivan mark, as it turns out.
Do we call him Jackie O?
Jackie O. I'm not sure he'd appreciate that, but Sully? Anyway, final question to cap things off for this episode. The Spaghettiest. The only solution to the predicament we're in is patience and time. Does the Hawthorn Football Club, including its members and supporters, have it in them to stay the course? Judging by the howls of disapproval on social media over the past couple of weeks, something tells me not.
So some of them have said that, the players aren't above judgment or criticism.
Yeah, and indeed Mitchell. It's one thing to say, look, this is what we're doing, this is the era that we're in, this is what a rebuild looks like. Well, some people fire back and they say, well, am I meant to just swallow that?
Yeah, I'm meant to have standards. Yeah, they're not adhering to the standards.
Yeah, if players aren't playing well, I'm allowed to say so.
I've seen enough football to know that he was not meant to do that.
Exactly. And fair enough. But all I'm saying is make it easier on yourself. Because otherwise you're just going to whip yourself into a frenzy of frustration. And there needs to be a degree of acceptance about where we're at.
Well, I hope there's not in the playing group. But in terms of when you go to the football at the moment, you're in a position where you might impact that young player's career by giving him encouragement from the sidelines. Mm-hmm. And, you're in at the beginning there. There's going to be moments where you're like, that kid's got something. Mm-hmm. And, it might fall away for them. But as a fan, you'll see some things and you'll be like, oh, look at that. That's a little bit like Hodgie used to do that. Or, no, you'll never say that's a bit like Cyril because that just doesn't happen.
No, it's not going to happen.
No. But, he can take a better overhead mark than Buddy. That can happen.
I mean, let's raise the bar a bit higher,
right? They're just, all these kids are working out what they're best at or what they can be best at. They're working out how to force that. Like we heard from Brewster, he just said, he's got this array of talents and you've got to lean into that and your coach has to build the game plan around you as well. So there's so many moving pieces.
I just think, we're at the conclusion of round 2 and set your expectations. If we haven't improved by the bye in any discernible way, if you want to be frustrated about that, well, I'd say fair enough.
And you've got to give the new blokes and the blokes that have changed positions 6 weeks because it's going to at least take 6 weeks.
Yeah, give them time and let yourself off the hook. You don't need to live in this negative mindset where everything needs to be perfect immediately. It's just not realistic.
Just enjoy what you can out of it.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. I'm not going to deny anyone feeling what they feel. If they're frustrated, fair enough. We've had such a, be so privileged as Hawks fans to have so much success for so long that this is a bit strange. We're in the wilderness a little bit, but doesn't have to be for long. Could see improvement. Fingers crossed this weekend we see an instance of muscle memory in which Liam Shields forgets who he plays for and kicks to Wingard for the match winner.
Or Dan Howe kicks across goal.
As is
one of those! No, are we allowed to give them those drive-bys?
Yeah, it's all in good fun. Yeah, that's the point, isn't it?
Yeah. And it should be good fun, and I hope they applaud Clarko when he goes out there at the start of the game. Not necessarily at the end, depending on the result, but I certainly have a big soft spot for Clarko.
Oh, so do I, but I'll be saving my applause for the 2013 reunion and events of such ilk, not while he's wearing those colours. Anyway, that'll be the Hawk Talk podcast. We'll be back next week to recap. Win, lose, draw, you name it, we'll be back. We'll catch you then. We are a happy team at Hawthorn.